Hello, second graders. I am so glad that I'm able to share stories with you today. But before we get started with that, I want to tell you a couple of riddles. Let's see if you get it. And remember, if you think you know, don't shout it out. Just kind of look like, yeah, I got it. What do elves learn in school? The alphabet? Good, good. I hope you like it. You know, this is such a wonderful season of giving. And our first story is about giving and receiving well. Now, have you ever seen someone who, opens a present and says, "Oh, this isn't really what I wanted"? Isn't that terrible? I hope you are a person who can accept gifts nicely. This story is called the baobab tree. And the baobab tree is said to grow in deep, deep in the African desert. And it is beautiful. It has real long spreading arms and a huge canopy. And it's oftentimes the only tree around for miles. Well, one day, Rabbit was hopping along, and he had been hopping for hours trying to get home. And he was tired. And suddenly he sees the baobab tree. He hops under it, and he looks up to the beautiful canopy of leaves and said, "Baobab tree, may I sit in your shade for a little bit?" And the tree almost seems to nod in the wind. And he sits there and catches his breath from the hot, hot heat. And then something plops down in his lap from up in the tree. And Rabbit looks down, and it's a beautiful, beautiful bunch of grapes. Oh, these are so good, and they have so much liquid in them. He just feels, oh, these are wonderful. He looks up into the tree and says, "Baobab tree, thank you. You knew just what I needed." After a while, Rabbit looked up into the tree and says, "Baobab tree, I know you have given me shade, and you gave me something wonderful to eat. But could I ask something? Right in the middle of my back, right up here, it's itching so badly. Could I just lean against your bark and scratch it?" And the tree seemed to nod. And so Rabbit backed up to the tree, and he went up and down and up and down. And oh, it felt so good. It scratched right where he needed. Then suddenly it scared Rabbit. There was a voice that came from deep inside the tree, and it said, "Rabbit, Rabbit, you seem so polite. Would you like to come inside my tree?" Rabbit was just astonished, and he said, "Well, if you don't mind, I've never heard of anyone going inside of your tree, and you've already been so generous." He said, "Stand there." And then from high up in the tree, there came this big crash. All the way down to the base of the trunk where Rabbit was standing, and the tree opened. Before it went in, it's just about to go in, and the tree said, "Rabbit, you may come in, but do not touch anything." Rabbit said, "Oh, of course not." And he hopped in, and after his eyes got used to the dark, he said he could see that there were meadows inside, green meadows, and it looked like they were dotted all over with beautiful flowers. wonderful looking flowers, reds, whites, blues. But as he got closer, they weren't flowers. They were jewels, jewels. Oh my goodness. He just kept walking and walking through these fields of jewels that seemed to be growing inside the tree. Then it was getting a little darker as he got deeper. And as he came, he could see in kind of another room a green light pulsing like that. Rabbit was very afraid, but he walked up and kept going into the room. And then in the room was a huge emerald, and it was so bright, it just seemed to give off a shimmer. Rabbit was shocked. After a while, he backed back out of the room and turned and was hopping his way out. As he was almost to the opening, Baobab Tree said, "Rabbit, you were true to your word. You did not touch anything, but now you can pick any jewel that you would like." Rabbit said, "Oh, that is so very nice. You gave me shade, you gave me something to eat, you let me come into this remarkable tree. Oh, thank you." And he looked around and he saw the diamonds and the jewels, but he saw a simple gold ring. And he reached down to pick it up and said, "Baobab Tree, may I have this?" "Of course, but you must never tell anyone about this tree." "Oh, no, of course not. I will respect you." He left and the tree closed. He hopped all the way home. He was so excited. He had to share with someone, but he wasn't supposed to. But that night when he was eating dinner with his beautiful bunny wife, he said, "Dear, I have something for you." And he gave her the gold ring. She was amazed. She put it on her tail. Oh, and it fit beautifully, and it was so big. She said, "You must tell me. You must tell me, where did you get this beautiful ring?" He said, "I can only tell you, dear, if you promise to never tell anyone." "Oh, of course, of course, of course," said, and he told her about the Baobab tree. Well, they went to sleep that night, and the next morning it was her market day, so she grabbed her basket and left and just checked her tail to be sure that ring was still on there, and she began hopping into town. Once in a while she still had to check that tail because it was so beautiful. Well, she saw many people and she thought, "No, I don't want to talk to those other people. I don't want to talk to those other animals. I need to be quiet about my secret." And she hopped over to the fruit section. Just then, she saw her least favorite friend, Mrs. Hyena. Mrs. Hyena saw Rabbit looking over her back all the time, and she got behind her and saw the gold ring. And she hopped in front of her and said, "Hey, bunnies, where'd you get that gold rings?" She said, "Oh, it's just a gift from my husband. We had an anniversary." And she hopped around her and went to the fish. And Mrs. Hyena came right up to her face and said, "You better tell me, sweeties, where you got that gold rings." And she said, "No, no, no." And she turned and hopped out of the market. But there around the corner was Mrs. Hyena, and she said, "You have one more chance to tell me about the gold rings." She said, "Well, will you leave me alone if I tell you?" And she said, "Yes." So Mrs. Rabbit told her about how her husband had hopped under the shade of the tree, and the tree had dropped fruit down, and then the tree had let him scratch his back, and he always said, please and thank you, tree. And then it had opened up, and there were jewels inside, and he got to take one home. Just for saying please and thank you. She said, well, yeah, I guess. She said, well, my dear, I'll see you later. And she turned and ran all the way home as fast as a hyena could move. When she got home, Mr. Hyena was sitting on his chair lounging. She said, get up, you lazy animal. I have a trip for you to take. And she told him the story of the baobab tree, how the rabbit said please and he got to sit in the shade, and how the rabbit said thank you and it got some food to eat, and how it even got to go inside where there were jewels. Oh, he said, I suppose you want me to go get one? She said, yes, of course I do. Well, he turned and hopped out because he knew that his wife would never let him hear the end of it. So he hopped out far into the desert and he found the baobab tree. As he came to it, he said, hey, I need to sit under your shade. Is that okay? Good. And he hopped under the shade and said, let's drop the fruit now, okay? Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, thanks, yeah. And he ate all that up. He said, oh, yeah, I have an itch in my back. I'm going to scratch it on your tree, okay? And still there was silence. And he said, no, wait a minute. I said, please. I said, thank you. How come I don't get to come inside? Baobab tree said, well, if you think you can come in and not touch anything, you may come in. Hyena said, okay, I'll agree to your rules. And just then there was a huge crack in the top of the tree, and it cracked all the way down and open for Hyena to go in. And as he took a step in, the tree said, remember, don't touch anything. Oh, yeah. He hopped in, and as his eyes got adjusted, he could see all these green fields. Yeah, it's kind of pretty. But then he could see all the flowers. Well, yeah, I like flowers. And then he realized that they were jewels. And he bent down and got a handful. And he walked a few feet and bent down and got a handful. And as he kept walking, he could see that room up ahead. And he walked toward it where it was dark, except there was green light pulsing and coming out of it like this. And he hopped in there, and there was that emerald, bigger than a human head, bigger than 3 human heads, pulsing light. He grabbed that emerald, turned, and started to run out of the cave when crack! The crack closed up. You know, Hyena was never seen again, and the baobab tree has never opened. So we must remember, especially during this month, to be thankful for all that we are given. Hey, let's get to another riddle real fast. Why does Santa have 3 gardens? Are you thinking? Do you think you know it? Because he likes to ho. I hope you like that one. Now, we're going to talk about another person who gives gifts and even finally receives a gift. This is called The Legend of the Christmas Spiders. Up high in Tatiana's ceiling lived several spiders, and they loved to hang up there and kind of spin their webs. But when Tatiana jumped out of bed that morning, she looked up at the spider webs and said, oh, today's the day I must clean the house from top to bottom. She got out her broom, knocked down all the spiders, then swept them all out the door. Then she dusted everything. All the spiders got so afraid, they ran up into the attic to hide because she was very busy. Today was the day of the Christmas party. She went out and cut a tree in the forest, came back and set it up near her kitchen, and then she went to work baking all sorts of cookies and treats and candies. And some of the cookies she even hung on the tree, and the candy she laid in bowls all around, because she knew that the children from the town would come soon to her house. And just about the time she got it all ready, there was a knock on the door. And the children rushed in and said, Tatiana, Tatiana, we're so glad to be here. They played games, they sang songs, they ate the candy, they drank some hot cider, and then it came time for them to take a cookie from the tree home. And they all left happy and excited. Well, when all the kids left, Tatiana washed up the dishes, straightened up the furniture, and then collapsed into a chair beside the tree. Oh, she was so tired. Before long, her head began to doze off. Oh, I'm so very tired. Well, after she had fallen asleep, all the spiders who had hidden away in the attic came out and were about to start weaving webs when they looked down and saw a tree in the house. What is a tree doing in the house, they thought. So they lowered themselves down on their webs and they began to explore the tree. All 15 or 20 of them went up and down the tree and around, trying to figure out why there was a tree in the house. And then when they left, there was sticky, gooey web stuff all over the tree. Later that night, Father Christmas was walking down the snowy lane in front of Tatiana's house on his way to leave things and shoes for all the children. But he peeked into Tatiana's window to see her tree, because she always had the prettiest tree. And oh my goodness, it was ugly. There seemed to be this kind of sticky white stuff all over it. He saw Tatiana sleeping in the chair by the fireplace and knew she would be so sad about her tree. So he wiggled his nose, whoo, and magic happened, and all the sticky spider webs turned silver and they glittered in the firelight. And that is how we came to have Christmas tinsel that we put on our trees. I'm going to tell you another cut and tell story. Do you remember we had a lot of those in first grade? See if you can figure out what I'm cutting, but if you do, just give that real smart look, okay? Here we go. I am sweet and spicy all at the same time. I can be very plain, or I can be very fancy. I taste best when I come from the oven, fresh from the oven. And there was a story written about me once, and I ran away in the story, and I called, catch me if you can, because I am, have you figured it out yet? I am the gingerbread man. I hope you've read that story before. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday and you get to eat some gingerbread cookies and maybe put tinsel on your tree. Here's one last joke to take you out of here. What is red and white and red and white and goes up and down and up and down? Got it? It's Santa on an elevator. Thank you very much, and I will see you next year in January. Goodbye.